Hello, my name is Ryan from Buster Beagle 3D, and today I'm going to do a review of the new S1 from xTool. It's an enclosed diode laser engraving and cutting machine with a host of features including autofocus, 3D engraving, conveyor extensions, and more. So what do I think of this machine, and is it the right machine for you? Well, let's find out. The xTool S1 comes in typical xTool fashion by being very well packaged with a nice presentation. The machine also comes almost completely assembled other than the laser head and an exhaust duct that you have to attach to the back of the machine. You also have to remove a few screws that were there to make sure nothing shifted during shipping. Other than that, it's essentially plug and play. My particular setup came with the 40-watt laser module. You can also get the machine with a 20-watt laser and a 2-watt infrared laser as well. You will notice that the laser module looks a little different to the version that you see on the D1 Pro with a more horizontal configuration, but attaching the module was a breeze. You will also notice a depth gauge on the side of the laser that will automatically measure your focal distance height for you, so now you don't have to worry about measuring the height anymore. This gauge will also be used for the 3D engraving that this machine is capable of that I'll talk about in a little bit. The laser module also comes with a built-in air assist that attaches to the newly designed air pump. This air pump can be manually turned on or controlled completely through the software, so you don't have to manually turn it on for cutting and lower or off for engraving. The airflow percentage is also adjustable in the software, so it's great for dialing in to your specifications. The workable area of the 40-watt machine is 498 by 319 millimeters, or 19.5 by 12.5 inches. So that's wider than the D1 Pro, but slightly shorter. Here you can see the size difference of the D1 Pro 40-watt to the S1. The S1 still gives you a decent amount of space to work with, and it fits nicely on my desktop. While the workable area is shorter, the machine is compatible with the optional conveyor, much like we saw on the xTool P2 CO2 machine, so the workable area is expandable up to 470 by 3,000 millimeters, or 1.5 feet by almost 10 feet. I unfortunately do not have the conveyor, and from what I can tell, the same conveyor from the P2 is not compatible with this machine. You would also have to purchase the riser base that I'll talk about in a little bit to be able to use the conveyor. However, just for my observation and using the conveyor on the P2, it does open the enclosure a bit, which does affect the smoke and fumes containment, so you're really going to only want to use that in a well-ventilated area. I'll also note that the machine does not come with safety glasses because of the nice laser shield, but the riser base does because when you open the doors, you may be exposed to the laser spot and should wear eye protection. You can tell the overall build of the machine is very nice and it's very well made. It has integrated drag chains, built-in LED lights, and a very nice laser-safe shield that protects your eyes from the laser spot. The lid also fits very well and does a great job of keeping the smoke and fumes contained inside of the enclosure and exhausted out of the back with a powerful fan and exhaust duct. It is a very similar feeling to the build quality of the xTool P2, but this is a diode machine like the xTool D1 Pro versus the P2, which is a CO2 machine. One of the major issues for people using a laser engraving machine is the safety factor of using an open frame machine like the D1 Pro. While you can get a collapsible enclosure for the D1 Pro, it's not the same as a machine like this that is truly fully enclosed. I'd be much more comfortable using something like this in a school or business setting over an open frame design. Also, while we're talking about safety, the xTool S1 comes with a few other safety features. The lid itself, according to the company, offers a dual wavelength protection for both the 40-50 nanometer laser as well as the 1064 infrared laser. The lid also has a sensor that will stop the job if it's ever open to make sure nobody can look at the laser while it's in operation. You can simply press the button on the front to start the job again. Also, none of this will run if you don't have the USB key plugged into the back of the machine. This seems to be the same USB key that came with the F1 machine earlier this year. There are 5 flame detection sensors on the machine, 4 on the frame and 1 on the laser head itself that will shut off the machine if a flare-up is detected. There is also tilt detection and an emergency stop button in case you ever need that. Again, xTool placed the emergency stop button near the rear of the machine, very similar to what they did on the P2. I would have preferred it more accessible on the front, but I'm assuming it's back there since the motherboard and electronics are back there. The machine is also compatible with xTool's fire safety extinguisher set, which will put out any fires it detects using CO2 gas. I believe this is only available in the US, and I haven't used it, but there is a port to connect it in the back if you choose to use that with the machine. The machine came with these triangle slats that I'm assuming are for placing down on the bottom metal plate to lift your projects up off the base while cutting. It's nice that they include that, but I would much prefer the Honeycomb that they also sent to me with this machine. I believe this is an extra add-on, but if you're going to be doing a lot of cutting, it's a really good add-on to have. The Honeycomb seems much more substantial than some of the other Honeycombs I've used in the past. It's magnetic and comes with very strong magnetic hold-downs that do a great job of holding your parts down. And since there is no shield on the laser head itself, you have some really nice clearance between the laser head and the piece, so there's much less worry of your laser head accidentally touching the workpiece while working. You can control the S1 through xTool Creative Space or Lightburn. However, some of the more advanced features like the 3D engraving will only be available in xTool Creative Space, as well as Wi-Fi control. I also have to say that if you've not taken a look at xTool Creative Space in a while, you may want to give it another look. I've been very impressed with how far that software has come and how it continues to be improved. I know I keep saying I'll come out with an updated tutorial on it, and I still need to do that, but give it a look. While it's compatible with Lightburn, I did all of the testing with this machine in Creative Space. The first thing you want to do when you start a job is get the focal height set with your piece. You do that by moving the laser head over the material and click on the distance button in Creative Space. This will automatically lower the laser head and use a sensor to measure the height of the wood. After that, the S1 comes with a new design to figure out the dimensions of the piece that you are working with. The S1 does not have a camera, but uses a 2-point coordinate system to let you know exactly where you will be engraving and cutting. To use this system, you need to click on the Mark Processing Area button in Creative Space and move the laser head so that the laser crosshairs are at the top left corner of the processing area. You then click the button on the front of the machine to mark that area. You then move the crosshairs to the bottom right corner of the workpiece and press the button again. After clicking done, you will see the work is highlighted. This should be a good indication of where your laser is going to engrave. You can, of course, still frame your workpiece, but in my view, it's even better than a camera system since you don't have to deal with any lens distortion or warping. It's a good system, but still has a little flaw in my opinion that I'll talk about in just a second. So the first thing I did, since we are coming up to Halloween, is this skulls image that turned out pretty nice. I engraved it and then cut out the piece. I didn't run any power speed tests and it was a little too dark and deep, so I flipped it over and burned it again on the other side. This time it works significantly better at 20% power and 200 millimeters a second speed. The top speed of the machine is also listed at 600 millimeters per second, but I never tried to push it that far. You can see that this image turned out very nice, and I was very happy with the results. It did, however, bring up a slight issue that I have with the 2-point coordinate system. While the system is really close, the issue comes with the squareness of the whole laser to the workpiece. While I tried my best to make sure that the wood was square to the laser, it was just ever so slightly off, so the image isn't exactly square on the workpiece. If you've been following my channel, you know that I've been pushing absolute coordinates since the original D1 a few years ago. I have come out with absolute coordinate grids for almost all of the machines I have reviewed in the past. Also, with the latest version of xTool Creative Space, they now support absolute coordinates natively, which is great. I think you may see where this is going. I decided to design and burn a grid directly onto the base plate of the S1 to take advantage of those absolute coordinates. I made it just shy of the full workable area to keep the numbers even, and it turned out pretty nice. Plus, since the tray is screwed down to the frame of the machine when in the configuration without the riser base, I know that it'll always be correct. With this grid, I am able to accurately know where my workpiece is and know that I will always be square to the laser head itself. Also, when cutting with the Honeycomb, the laser focus is high enough that it doesn't mark the grid below, so it should last a pretty long time. If I ever need to redo it, I could probably just spray paint the tray and burn it again. I will have this grid on my Etsy page linked in the description, along with all of the other grids, or just search Buster Beagle 3D on Etsy. So with my updated coordinate system, I decided to engrave on a slate coaster, which turned out great as expected. I accidentally ran this a little too slow, so it took a while, but it still turned out great. I also did a wood coaster that I was able to line up, again, very precisely using the grid. Circles are another thing that make the 2-point coordinate system a little harder to use, but with the grid it was no problem. After that, I decided to cut something out really quick for Halloween. I ran this very cool tea light candle holder I got off of the xTool project page from a user named Drew Boyne. It cut out extremely fast and was an easy and fun project to make. I think I'll end up making quite a few more of these before the end of the month. At the end of the day, this was a 40-watt laser and works exactly how I expected the 40-watt laser to work from xTool. I have reviewed their other 40-watt lasers in the past, so there's really no reason to repeat all of those jobs in testing, as it works pretty much exactly the same, but I will go over other exciting features that come with the S1 machine, and that is the 3D engraving. Now, just before I dive into the 3D engraving, I want to just briefly talk about the riser base that you can also get as an option with this machine. This riser base can add up to 135 millimeters or 5 inches to the engravable area of the machine, and it's also what you need to use the conveyor feature that I mentioned before to be able to engrave up to 10 feet of material. The use of the riser base will also accommodate the use of the RA2 Pro. However, again, if you have the RA2 Pro from either the D1 Pro or the P2, it has a different plug that will not work with the S1, so you'll have to get a new cord from xTool. If you have the F1 and the RA2 Pro, then the cord is compatible. It just plugs into the port on the front of the machine, just inside the LED strip. I also wanted to point out that there are apparently 2 versions of this riser base, one that is compatible with the conveyor and one that is not. Apparently there are some different laws concerning Class 1 and Class 4 laser safety ratings, but if I'm reading that correct, my viewers in Europe might be able to get the riser, but only the version not compatible with the conveyor, so just be sure to research which version you are getting if you are in Europe, and know that it might be slightly different than mine. Sorry about that. So now on to the 3D engraving. The S1 has the ability to plot out the height difference of an object and burn onto a curved or slanted surface. Much like the xTool P2, the laser head will record multiple points on the surface and create a 3D object that can then be used to burn onto the contour of the surface. The P2 uses an optical sensor, while this S1 uses a metal probe. First, you tell it where the top left corner you want to measure is, then you tell it the bottom right corner. It will then measure a grid at regular intervals to be able to shape out the object. You need to be careful, especially with something like a bowl, since there's not a lot of clearance between the nozzle and the bottom of the laser module. I'm not exactly sure what the max depth is that you can achieve, but I know that the depth and angles of the walls all play a part in what can and can't be engraved on. There is also an issue if you are doing odd shapes like this tree bowl, where if I was trying to measure the outside and the sensor didn't hit the wood, it would only be able to drop so far before it stops and sounds the alarm that it can't reach the surface. I have a whole video on doing 3D engraving with the P2. While it's a little different, the concepts and ideas are the same. You can check out the video in the link above. After it measured the surface, it will let you know which areas will not work with the machine that you can see shaded here. If you try to put art in this area, it will almost certainly crash into the part. So I measured a smaller and better, clearer area on this bowl and was able to engrave into it. The final result came out really nice, and this is not something I would have been able to do with my D1 Pro or my other diode lasers. Now, you can get some pretty steep engravings just based on the shape and the clearances around the object. I also ran a job on this old knife block that was a pretty steep angle. You can really see how this could come in handy with a lot of situations where you can't work with a perfectly flat surface. It is also really nice to see this laser head moving up and down automatically on its own, and as you can see, this knife block came out very, very nice. So for my overall impressions on this machine, it's a very well-built machine and does a great job keeping you safe as well as evacuating the smoke and fumes away from your work area. If you were on the fence about using a laser because of the open frame design, this machine solves that, and again, is a machine that I would be much more comfortable using in a school or business setting than an open frame machine. It has a slick design and would look great in your home or workshop. While it definitely takes up more room than something like the D1 Pro that can be hung on a wall out of the way when it's not in use, it doesn't take up as much room as the P2 and is way lighter. Again, this is a diode laser, which is different than the P2, which is a CO2 machine. If you're not aware of the differences, you can check out my video on that machine in the link above. So that's it. I wanted to thank xTool for once again trusting me to bring you guys a fair and honest assessment of this machine by sending this machine to me for a review. I also wanted to point out that I am reviewing this machine pre-launch, so some stuff may change, but I'm pretty sure the version of the machine I have is the same as the production unit. Thanks again for watching. If you like this review, please do give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more videos on laser engravers, 3D printers, injection molding, and all things maker. Thanks again, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.